Hey everybody, Brad Linder back at you again for the daily sketch card with Brad Linder Creating Comics. So, we're going to hang out for a few minutes and I'm going to be doing G.I. Joe's Cobra Storm Shadow. Now, this isn't a very heavy pose on this one, but it's going to be cool. We're going to knock it out and it'll be fun. So, we're going to go for it and go from there. So give me just a second to put this on the page on Facebook with the group and then with YouTube. And there we go. So we're going to knock this out right now. I went with a mid-grade version of the character because of the fact that I wanted to get the essence, but I didn't want to necessarily just carbon copy everybody's version on this character, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a look-alike contest anyway, because there's only so much you can do with it. But in my style, it comes out a little bit different, so I wanted to play around with it a little bit and see what we could come up with that would look cool while still looking as a match to the set with the cards, with the profile and the card setup. So I've got this going along, and I noticed I've got kind of an animated look with this one, and like I said, it's a strange one, but excuse me, it works. And it helps if I don't try to breathe the throat drop, because my allergies are stirred up today, because all of a sudden it got cold here, and I'm not going to go into a long dissertation about the weather or anything, but it just got really cold. It rained last night, and we got some strange cold snap going on, and it's just weird. But anyway, yeah, I've got kind of a, like I said, almost a J. Scott Campbell type of thing going on. This has a little reminiscent look of Jeff's work. He is a big influence on me and a very cool guy. So has a great animated look, and I tend to do some of that, some of those features in there, but I didn't use it as a model or anything. This is my take on it. That's why the pose is not kicked out very solid, because of the fact that I just wanted to do a profile shot and see how it would look in my style. And like I said, I read a lot of the IDW books when they came back out. I mean, I was a long time fan because I was an 80s kid anyway, but still, the recent influences on G.I. Joe have definitely taken a toll to max out to where that set the standard for the very dynamic look. And it almost has a Korean style comic art style to it in the way that it's done now. Everything is block jaw and really, rounded muscles, kind of like Street Fighter. And that's done by a lot of, the udon guys and whatnot, which come from all walks of life. But their stuff still tends to be more of an animated, I don't want to say anime style, but it's more of a curvaceous animated style. They round everything out a little more, and I've been leaning heavily on that with my heroes for muscular study and things like that. I study a lot of Burns, Hogarth, so yeah, that going on, and it's just all about what you personally like in your style. And I have so many influences and so many things that I study every day, because I do a couple of hours of case studies a day. And I'm serious. I do 60 minutes in the morning and 60 minutes in the evening. And I study classics, Silver Age stuff, and then I study modern stuff. Most of it is comic art, but there are other influences, animators and painters that really get into the mix and get things going. So it just depends, you know. But you guys will see a lot more of that coming out in the comic work that I'm doing. Not that I'm cloning anybody or anything, because my thing is, if I like a technique, I like to grab onto it, practice it, and incorporate it into my style. You know, if I like to draw noses a certain way, that's what I do. I go and draw noses that certain way. But if I draw, like this, the mandible muscle that's in here, I'm always cutting in that jaw real heavy, and I block jaws out. You know, people tell me that I make jaws really big, and I've heard a lot about that. And it's kind of like I guess John Romita Jr. would be a good example, because he has a very blocky style, and the faster to the deadline that he has to get, the more blocky and gritty it gets. And he's cleaned up his artwork a lot and stopped cross-hatching with speed lines and stuff, and dirtying up the water, so to speak. But yeah, some of his stuff in the 80s on Daredevil was just crazy. Spider-Man 2 in the late 90s, in the mid 90s, when he would cross over and do Spider-Man books. A lot of his older Punisher work was like that, and it would get, you could always tell when he was under pressure to get the deadline, because it would get really gritty, and that's just one of those things. And it would get blockier and grittier and less defined, and it wouldn't be as smooth, Of course, he's never been one to have his dad's line. John Romita had one of the smoothest lines in comics, but not necessarily one of the most dynamic. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging by any means. I'm just saying, from an artistic perspective of my personal opinion, which I'm a huge fan of John's, that's one of those things where it's just, it didn't hold my attention as well as some of the later, the later stuff that Junior's done. He's got a great dynamic, but then he's got a really gritty line. So, but like I said, people say things about my art all the time too, and I'm cool with that. It's starting to get a style to where people recognize it, and I've done this long enough now that everybody knows. 9 times out of 10, people can go, well, that's, if they know my style, that is, they can come along and pick it up. And sometimes, they'll pick it up and know it, and sometimes that's, they won't know who I am or whatever, and it'll be reminiscent of whatever. But if you see my style a couple of times, that's when you know. So if you're an artist and you're trying to get in the groove of this, practice what you like. Don't copy or clone that, because I hate that when people do the copy clone thing. And it's like, I'm going to draw like, for example, John Romita Jr. So I'm just going to go imitate his stuff and become a clone. Don't do that. That was the downfall of the image craze in the 90s and in the 2000s, because of the fact that, so many of those studios were doing cloned books. And I'm serious. Everybody looked like Mark Silvestri, and everybody's work in Mark Silvestri's studio looked like Mark Silvestri stuff. It was scratchy, it was clean, it was clingy, and what I mean by clingy is it was it clinged to the page because it was so flat. And I don't mean any disrespect to those guys, because they're phenomenal artists, but I've seen so many of those knockoffs come through, and it's like, well, the studio, the style, and they say it's a studio style, and it's just like, oh, please, you're trying to get everybody that gets the vibe of your work, and you pick what you like and what's similar to what you're working on. So, same thing with Rob Liefeld, which Rob was notorious for hiring guys that had similar styles to his, and just went crazy with it. And like I said, no offense to him, he's a great artist and a great guy. It's just an observation, it was a technical observation. And that's one of those things where you see that all the time, and then you see these guys coming out these indie guys, and they're like, well, I can't get work and I don't know why. My pages are great. Well, yeah, they would have been great for 1994. Stop doing that. You know, make pages for your own style, grab onto it, gravitate to that, do the work, and get it done. Don't come out and clone everybody else's stuff. You know, take influence, but don't get inundated. There is a difference. You can look that word up. You know, don't get inundated, which means don't get mind blown or hypnotized by that same style because you're a fan of it, and let it engulf your work to where you lose yourself in that same style. And then you wonder why you're a clone. Well, you've made yourself self-delusional to the fact that you aren't that person. You know, you're doing that guy's work. Well, stop that. So, but anyway, that's one of those things, man. I see that kind of stuff all the time. And I keep telling people, you know, this looks too much like so-and-so. This looks too much like so-and-so. Stop that. And I'll get artists that get mad at me all the time because of it. They'll be like, man, you don't know what you're talking about. My style's my style. No, it's not. If it looks like so-and-so's, admit it. You were influenced. You know, I've seen professional artists. I made a couple comments on it, and they hate me because of it. And I've seen tangents and rants and things like that, and it's just stupid. You know who you are. You're a grown man. You're a grown artist. You've been doing this stuff. You know, you're a professional. And just because you have the Marvel logo under your belt doesn't mean that you are the grand master of anything, okay? You know, everybody's still a student at some point. And if you stop growing, you're dead in the water. I see that happen all the time. And you know, a lot of these guys will come out and say, well, don't compare my work to this because, you know, people that hate on me because of this, that, and the other. And, you know, somebody said today my style looked like Joe Ramirez style, you know, the Joe Muriera style or John Ramirez style. And I hear that crap all the time, and it's just grow up. If you're being compared to one of the greats, accept it. Accept it as the compliment it is. Stop griping at people because they have an opinion and they see the influence that you're copying from or growing from or cloning, and go from there, you know. But in this regard, I know I'm picking up different influences. I pick up influences all the time. I hear that my stuff looks like old Greg Capullo, you know, styles, and it's got an animated feel to it. Well, good, cool. I like that. You know, because my comic pages have a lot of detail in them, way more than this. And I can't necessarily do that with Relapse like I do with the comic pages because of the fact that it's just too time consuming. But, you know, I got to get that webcomic out. So that's part of that process as to why it's a little more shallow than some of the other stuff that I've done. But, yeah, man, I hear it all the time. You know, your artwork looks like this or that, or I can see the influence of this. And, hey, cool, good. That means I did it right. Because if you can see it and it's incorporated in my style, then that's the influence that I'm going for, then awesome, because that means I did my job. But I incorporated it without cloning their crap. So it's their crap mixed in with my crap, and then we get some new crap to show you guys this crap. So there you go. But anyway, it's been one of those days. But anyway, yeah, it's cool, man, because I love cloning, you know, not cloning stuff, but checking stuff out. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on. Hey, Thomas, you made it, man. I was curious if you were going to pop on. But, you know, I hear that all the time. If you're an artist or you're a marketer, you know, whatever you follow me for, or if both, in a lot of cases, you know, I say this: don't be a knucklehead. You know, if you want to get inspired from someone and incorporate their method or methodology or their style, then do that. But don't go out and just blatantly rip them off, you know. I see that all the time. And one of the best things in the world is to open up a new program and say, oh, check out my program for me. You know, I want you to review my program for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, it's stuff I've seen 50,000 times because it's done, you know, in a crappy way, and it's just bore me to death. But you know, if you incorporate your own voice and your own style into it, then I don't see there being much of a problem, and that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. It really isn't. But when you go out and, you know, you copy and clone and cookie cutter their stuff, you know, whether it's art or marketing, don't do that, because, you know, there's respect and imitation, but there is also a loss of, you know, respect and going dirty with it when you're, you know, just swiping their stuff. I mean, it does happen all the time. Don't do that. Find your voice, do your thing, make it happen. And, you know, I see a bunch of people running around all the time saying, well, you know, I make $50,000 a day and da 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 da, and I'm like, you're so full of it. You're living. I'm so sorry. You're so full of it. And, you know, the IRS watches this stuff, you know, so be careful what you brag about, because the FCC and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, and the IRS all watch the internet. And if you come down flashing a bunch of cash that you got a $20,000 loan on because you hawked your house so that you can make a video, when you start flashing that cash, they're going to want to know where their chunk of that money is. So stop that, because you're going to get yourself in trouble. I mean, I've seen videos online where they've busted into houses of guys that have been, you know, supposedly selling this, selling that, and they can't confirm where it is. And all of a sudden, the IRS is busting through their door. And yes, they can do that. So, you know, the FBI will come and investigate you. So stop it. That whole lying about money and showing off cash and stuff. You know, I work with students every day, and, you know, art students and, you know, marketing students. And if you got your stuff together, cool deal, man. But I tell you, be cautious and careful about what you come out and represent yourself as, especially as an artist or a marketer, because if you put that stuff in publication, there are people that will sue you in a heartbeat. And that's just from the aspect of, you know, the concept. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, like I said, the IRS can come after you forever, and they're not friendly when they start making an enemy out of you. When you get to the point to where they're investigating you, you're no longer an optional pay-as-you-go type of person. You are indebted to them, and they do this funny little thing called an audit, which will make your butt pucker tight enough to pull a button on a chair. And it's exactly what it means. You know, you got to be very careful, very careful. But, you know, that's part of it where we're coming to fruition with marketing and comics as well, because there's a monopoly in comics where everything's locked up. And if you're an individual creator, you know, I won't say any names of any companies, but I got offered a contract today. And let me tell you, this is a mainstream company. And they offered me $30 a page. They offered me exclusive 6 months of comic books. And then they turned right around and they said, anything you create, it literally said in the contract, anything you create for this 30 days, or, you know, for during that 30-day period of an issue, is automatically theirs, first option. And it didn't say anything for comic books. It didn't say anything for this, that, and the other. It specifically said the word anything and left it general. You know, I see stuff like that all the time and I just laugh. But I tell you what, it's getting serious, because some of the artists that I work with that are trying to make a dent, they are actually coming across and saying now that they're considering it. They're considering it. I'm sorry, but if you know a comic book is 25 pages, 24 plus a cover, and you're offered $750 a page on a 6-month basis and can't do any other work, you work exclusively for that company and can't do anything, and they own anything that you design during that contract duration, that's $750 a month, man. That's gross. Now, as a contracted employee, as a freelancer, you have to go in and pay all the wonderful taxes on that too. Now think about that one for a split second. If that doesn't make you cringe, I don't know what will. I'm going to tell you hands down. Now, I'm not knocking a contract. And if you're trying to get your foot in the door, awesome. But if you're letting them run you over and railroad you because of the fact that they've been working with third world country artists or whatever they've got going on, and they come in and they say, well, this is what we pay artists now, this is the going rate, and it's because they're paying, you know, kids in wherever. I'm not going to point any country out because that's just rude, but wherever they're coming from, and they're being abused and don't realize it because they're getting that money, and that money translates into their country currency by the thousands in difference. Yeah, you know, that's just bad business across the board, and I totally disagree with that model. So don't do that. You know, don't get tied up in that crap, because then you're supporting that standard, that low standard for these comics to come out, and you know, you're busting your butt like 80 hours, sometimes 100 hours to get a comic book done, depending on the speed that you have to get it done in, and the progress that you have to do to get the pages done, depending on your speed. Man, you could lose just hours and hours and hours, and you can't support yourself on that, because then you have to take Uncle Sam's part of it out. You have to pay the accountant out of that. You have to pay the bank fees out of that. You have to pay the contractual fees out of that. And then all of a sudden you're with like $450 maybe out of that $750 every month. You got to do the math before you go jumping into these things, because most people go, well, I want to work for that company. Yay, sploosh. And then they come up like a buoy because they're doing this, because they're just getting bounced around, because they have no idea how to have buoyancy and control over what they're doing. So they're just bouncing around like crazy. And what they're doing is they're being taken advantage of by these companies. And, you know, the digital age of comics is out there. The print-on-demand comics are out there. There's no reason for a company to isolate somebody like that and say, well, you know, I'm just going to do that low-grade integrity and I'm going to burn you. And that's exactly what they're doing by that. So when they come out and come after you and they offer you a job, pay close attention to what they're offering, because you got to read those finite details, because they'll burn you bad. And I mean bad. And, you know, I got that offer, and I was just like, I'm sorry, but no. They were like, well, you understand what you're giving up by not working with us, right, and accepting this contract. And I said, yeah, I'm keeping my business going, and I'm keeping my company up, and I'm being able to work on my stuff and not worry about you taking it. So don't ever do that. So that's where it's at today, you know. Do your own thing, do your original stuff, build your own style, build your own concept. And if you incorporate somebody else's stuff in there, just acknowledge that you're incorporating it as a study. And if you like the way somebody draws noses and you want to incorporate that into your stuff, do it. If you want to make comics and work with the company, do it. But don't give up your livelihood and your own creative flow and your own creative leverage because of the fact that you think you're going to cut yourself a paycheck, because I guarantee you you're not. Keep that in mind. So anyway, that's where we're at today, because I got that contract and I was just like, I have to say something. I have to. I'm not going to reveal who it is because that's unprofessional. But I am going to say this. Watch it. CYA. And we're going to say it because of the kids. I'm going to say it. They'll get a good laugh out of it. But here it is. Cover your arse. And if you don't do it, it's on you. So always read your contract, always have legal coverage, and always do your own thing, you know? And I think that's a big way to go with it, because I'm going to tell you flat out, if you don't, they're going to walk all over you. And there's some mainstream companies that are doing this now. And like I said, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, and I'm not going to disrespect any other companies. by revealing the fact that that was offered to me, but I'm going to tell you hands down, you got to get in there and say no. You got to be able to say no because of the brand that's coming at you and saying, well, because we're this brand, we're going to offer you this stamp and you got to accept it. And that's it. Why? Don't do that to yourself. You know? Make sure that you cover your butt because that's what's going to happen. And I hated rejecting that contract. I would love to work with that particular company, but I have standards and I have bills to pay with my family and, you know, my business, and I'm not giving up any of my creations to anybody under any reason unless I choose to do so. So I say, you know, you just need to go on your way and say bye-bye to that because it's not going to happen. It's just not. So, and if you listen to this and learn something out of that, I hope you do. Be careful and read your stuff, you know, and accept criticism as well. That's a cool thing too, back about the style thing. Accept criticism. It's going to happen. If you put yourself out there and people don't like your work or people criticize your work or people come at you, don't get butthurt about it. Just step up and say, okay, cool. You know what that means? That means I'm doing something unique to where people don't like it just as much as people do. And the scale of I don't like it will come up here, and the scale of I do like it and want it will come way up here because of the fact that you're defining a unique voice in your product. That's exactly what you got to look at it as. And that's with marketing or comics. So, you know, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Do your thing. And if anybody tells you otherwise, send them to me and I'll tell them flat out, yeah, I said it. And, you know, if you're griping about it, you can either accept it too and enjoy the fact that you don't like that and go enjoy the stuff that you do, or you can be a fly in the ointment and cause problems and get, you know, totally ignored because that's what's going to end up doing. That's what's going to end up happening to you and having someone do that, and that's what it's going to do. You know, so it's doing it from the second you open your mouth or type that first word. You know, I get criticized all the time. It's like, man, your stuff's awesome. And then I get unfriend because I don't like your artwork, or, you know, I expected a different level, or I expected a wow and didn't get that. Booey. And that's a technical term, mind you. So, but don't let other people judge your stuff because guess what? At the end of the day, it's an opinion. And you know how opinions work. You know how opinions work. Everybody has opinions. And they will freely give them to you because they are free. And that's what it is. That's what it is. It's their opinion. Don't let it get you. I've seen so many people just lock up because somebody says, oh, I don't like your work. And I'll see artists in tears. And I'll, why? Why are you in tears? He doesn't like my work. Does he pay your bills? Does he? What about the thousands of other people that do? How many other fans do you have? Well, 3,487, and you're whining about one. Think about the odds there. Do the math. You got to think about this stuff. Common sense. Common sense is a virtue that's like time. Once it comes, it's there, but once it's gone, it's gone. So I leave you with that one for today. We're going to have this guy sitting here, StormShadow from G.I. Joe, one of my absolute favorite animated series from the 80s. And a couple of things they've done with the reboots in the 90s and 2000s is, yeah, it's cool. But, you know, we'll see what happens. But anyway, this is it for tonight. That's what I've got here. I've got StormShadow here, and I'm going to keep this really clean and simple, like I said, animated style. So I'm going to keep it open and work with that so that we don't get it all jumbled up and whatnot. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. As you know, we only have this world for a little short period of time, a smidge, blink, sparkle in the sky, known as life. So let's keep the party rocking, and remember to keep it open and cool and stocked for the next generation. Talk to you guys tomorrow.